So congratulations on the release of Gone for Days. I got to hear a preview of it when you did a little hotel cafe event. You performed everything live and you spoke a lot on stage with my pal Katie Darrell at that time about like I definitely got the impression that this album means a lot to you, probably more than any other album you've ever put out.
For sure.
So I'll just start with the very open-ended question as to why that is the case.
Yeah. That's a very valid question, and I think it's one that I was asking myself too before I made it because it felt really important before I even started recording this album. And I don't know if it was just it's a combination of like where I'm at in my career, and I think over the years I've consistently put out albums, I've consistently put out music, so it's kind of like what makes this one different. And to start, I knew I didn't want to make the record in Los Angeles. I think that I think maybe it could be a number of things that I've made all of them here for the most part, and I think I put out my last record and it was kind of split up during the COVID era, right? So we recorded half of it, then it got split up, and it was just kind of like I don't know if that left a weird taste in my mouth or what it was, but something told me to get out of here and make the record somewhere else. And a big fire starter for that was I got the opportunity to go play Bristol Rhythm and Roots. And when I did that, I was playing with my buddy Dave Egger, who was at that Hotel Cafe show, and Phil, who was also with me. Both amazing musicians, and they're out in Bristol. And I went and played Bristol Rhythm and Roots, and we went and visited the studio where I would eventually end up recording the record. And I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of like, everything just feels peaceful. Everything feels right. It doesn't have that Los Angeles cloud, that competitive thing that can come with being out here. And I left and I just kind of like told my wife, I'm like, hey, I have something I want to talk to you about. And she knew. She was like, you want to make your album here? And I'm like, I do. She's like, you should. So it was like a month later, I call up the guys, the studio. I'm like, can we do this? Is this like even possible? Like, if can we make this work? They're like, when? I'm like, early next year. They're like, yeah, great. And then I had two songs kind of that I was working on, and I had this weird moment leading up to going to Bristol where I was like, I gotta write all the music. And it was that same feeling that I get from being out here making music where everything's going so quick. Everything's this like, how fast can you turn it around? And I kind of paused and said, I'm gonna go out there for 3 months. I'm just going to let whatever's going to happen happen. And I'm going to get into this house that I rented and just be with myself and write. And I did. And what started to happen was the more I was being honest with myself, being out there and, kind of all the things that you shove under the rug or tuck away or hide behind when you're making a record. And I think every songwriter goes through that in some way or another. I just became comfortable with those things, like the things that would scare me usually to write about, or the things that I didn't want to do in the past. I was okay with doing. And, obviously over the years we've talked at length about my journey from Idol and all that. And I think that's something that happened to me over the years that I really came to realize before I recorded was being on a show like that, and obviously we don't have to dive too deep into it, but it is relevant to this because I think for years it was really important to me to prove myself as a songwriter. And and I think that maybe subconsciously I was on this singing show.
And also, not to interrupt you, but now they are much more open about letting contestants perform their own songs on
Right.
that show, and they
Right.
were not in your season.
No, no, not at all. It was actually frowned upon. But I think that after all that and making record after record, I think it was really a decision I made to not ever necessarily make my vocal be the centerpiece to the music. It was always kind of let the story and the songwriting be the centerpiece. And I think that even the way I approached vocally or produced it up It was always kind of like my vocals were in there and they were beautiful and they did their thing, but I never wanted that to be the showcasing piece. And I think that that was in part because there was a part of me that may have felt like, yeah, I know I have a great voice or whatever. I know I was idle, but I'm a songwriter, you know? And I think I got to a point in my life, in my career, and it was a huge turning point for me for many reasons. From losing my manager,
Oh, yeah, I'm so
losing,
sorry. I forgot about it.
yeah,
I'm so sorry about that.
yeah, that was
I do
rough.
believe I might have messaged you at the time, but I either you were.
I was in such shock over the whole thing, but you know, he's my manager for 13 years and a best friend, like a brother to me. And so losing him and then coming out of it was just kind of like this space where I really had to do some soul searching. And I was like, you know, I looked back at the albums that I always talked about, you know, in interviews, you always kind of reference the same. I'm sure you know more than anyone. You can interview someone 4 times and they'll always go back and be like, this record, that changed my life. And for me, it really was Tea for the Tiller Man by Cat Stevens. And
Oh.
I listened to that record and I was like, his voice is just telling the story. And like, that's why I love it so much, his emotion and these. And so it was a conscious decision by me, um, my call to say, on this album, I don't want to hide my vocals behind production. I don't want to hide it under vibe. I want, where I look at like a Ghost Stories or a Paranoia or some of my other albums, I think I like to look at them as these long, beautiful poems that you can get lost in. And I've always envisioned it that way. I always want the songs to feel how what I'm singing about sounds. But on this one, I was like, I'd rather it be a book with chapters that you could listen to each song, and when you get into the next one, you're in a different chapter of that book. And I really wanted to say, like, well, if I want these stories to be told, if I want them to be heard, and if I want that emotion felt, it's going to be really important that people hear my voice speaking to them. And it kind of goes with this thing that's happened to me over the years where I go out and play acoustic a lot. You know, I go out and do my thing, and people come up to me and without fail, I love your albums, but there's something about when you play live that's just different. And I love that. And I thought about that at length. And I'm like, the reason they're feeling that way, I think, is because they're hearing me. It's
Mm,
just, it's almost this very pure form of what I'm doing. It's like, here's just me and the guitar. And there's almost this feeling of there's no choice but to listen to what I'm saying because it's just me and you and the guitar. And so while the other albums have had great successes as far as License and Sync, and I've loved every second of them, this one, to answer your question, this is the long answer, but to answer your question of why this record, I think it's the most represent represent it represents me as an artist, as a songwriter, as a vocalist, um, maybe the best of anything I've done. And at the end of the day, one of my mantras going into this was make an album that you would want to listen to. Like, don't go into it saying, oh, I hope this gets placed in a movie and I hope my
mm,
fans like it and I hope this happens or that happens. Like, those things will come or they won't. Like, I have a great relationship with License and Sync, and those things will happen. And I, but to put that at the forefront felt um, like counterproductive almost. It was like, go and write an album that you love. Go and write that record. Go and make music that you would love to listen to that's honest and that can connect with people. And like the more and more I was there and the more and more I was recording and writing and writing and recording, it just kind of took on this life of its own. And halfway through it, I was like, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm loving this process. It doesn't feel like one of the darker times I ever had was making Paranoia. And I've never really talked about this, but I think it comes through in the album itself. But there's this moment I think many songwriters face where you ask yourself in the middle of the process, like, why am I doing this?
oh, wow.
why am I writing this record? Why am I making these songs? Why am I doing this at all? Um, is it because I need to pay the bills? Is it because I can't help myself because I love music? Is it because I feel like I guess I should put out music? And it's kind of a culmination of all of those things, I think, at times. But on this one, I don't think any of those things played a part. It was, I have songs and I have something. It felt for the first time, maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say ever, but in a long time, that I was like, I really do have something to say. And this is how I happen to do that. This is what I do. And so that was just like the backbone of the whole thing. And putting that, I mean, it sounds so silly, but putting the music first, you know?
It's so funny, a minute ago, you were like, "So to answer your question," I'm like, "Question?" Over here, I got, like, a list of all my questions. You
Yeah,
answered, like, 8 of them at once, but I appreciate that, made my
right.
job easier. But, on a more serious note, you mentioning the death of your manager, Brett Radin, who was with you for this whole journey. He came on, I mean, pretty much very shortly after you won American Idol, right? Well, like, when you
Yeah,
were,
like a year or two after, yeah.
and was there helping or not, he was there when you had the whole, like, Walking Dead thing and kinda,
Yeah.
like, have sort of rebuilt your career. Was this something?
That was one of the first things we did. The walk. I mean, within the first year, that the Walking Dead song, um, and I've talked about it on stage. I don't know if I've ever talked about it in an interview format as much, but coming off of a show like that, the first thing that I thought of the minute they said my name, um, after I got over the like shock of it, it was I am a songwriter, and how am I going to get these millions of people that watch and vote and all this to get on board with that version of me? And I was younger, and it was very confusing, and it was a lot of things. And that was the first thing that hit me. And there came a point where I was like, well, what can I do? What can I do? Like, what can I do to let the masses know that I'm a songwriter? And the thing I came up with was, I'm going to write a song for the most popular television show. And I really don't fucking care if anyone likes it or not. I'm just going to do it. And Brett was, one of the guys that I was playing it in a rehearsal for something. And he's like, what is that? Literally, he's on his phone. He's like, look, what is that? I'm like, it's this song I wrote and I want it to go in The Walking Dead. And he's like, oh, okay, well, let's record it. So the next day we go to Paramount Studios, we record it. 3 days later, we send it to AMC, through our channels. I was at Vanguard at the time. And that's not how it works. For anybody that, when I talk license and sync, it's not necessarily the prettiest part of the music industry, but it is a huge part of it, for someone like me, at least. And the way that usually works is you write songs and you have someone that pitches your music. Your cat is so cute.
She's interested in what you have to say.
I love it. And you develop relationships with music supervisors over the years. I mean, back in the day, after Idol, when people would be like, "Get on that red carpet," I would be like, "No, take me to the Durango, supervisor thing where you sit in a room with people that, again, it's not the flashy thing, but you play your music, you get to know these people, and you get to let them know who you are." And so I did that stuff for years, and so very, very unorthodox, but we literally just sent them the song. We're like, we'd love this to be in the show. A week later, they send us a script and they're like, it's going to be in the front, it's going to be in the back. And I was like, fuck yeah, dude. Like this is, and it really did. It's easy to go back and say Idol changed my life, and it did. But this changed my life in a different way. It
Yeah.
was a different hurdle I was able to climb, and it opened up the doors for years and years of doing that. And so yeah, Brett was really, if there's one thing he always understood, it was like, dude, you're more than this show. Like, there's a lot more to your career and things you should be doing. And he was always very supportive of that. So losing him was a big kick in the fucking gut, man. Yeah.
Yeah, again, I'm so sorry about that. I don't know sorry, refresh my memory. When did he pass away?
Two, no, I think 2 Novembers ago,
Oh,
almost.
it was that long ago. So this was before you had
Honestly, it's
started.
such a fucking blur, but like
It's like,
a little bit over a year and a half ago. Yeah.
okay, I was trying to figure out, at what had you started on Gone for Days yet, or was it after?
So it's funny you say that. he never heard any of the songs but one, and it was Into the Wild. And to this day, it's so funny because, he got so used to me almost in a way being writing songs and always being like, I have a new song, I have a new song, I have a new song. And he always, he loved the music, obviously. But I remember, I mean, I even have text messages from him and it's like, he's like, man, that Into the Wild, there's something special about that song. He's like, it's like my favorite song of yours.
Oh, wow.
And so he did get to hear that one. And so, it happens to be the first song on the record. So
Was that on purpose as a tribute or?
no, I mean, not, I mean, I don't say no in a no. I loved this song and it was going to go on this record. It being the first song just happened to feel right. It's funny when you make a record, you sit with the songs and there's people that do the post-it note thing where they have all the songs and you rearrange them. And but then I kind of looked at it like a story and I'm like, well, what's the story I'm telling and how does that play out? And it felt like Into the Wild was this kind of um, venture into the unknown, and I don't know what's going to happen. And then I end it with Butterfly Effect, which is a much more confident, much more calming, very personal, by far the most personal song I've ever released. And so it really kind of just helped start that arc of the album. It just felt like song one. And after I got song one, after I had all the songs in front of me, and I had song one and I had song nine, it was very, I don't want to say easy, but it made it easier to say, well, how does this puzzle piece fit? Because it's like any movie. It's like if you know where the characters start and you know where they end, you can fill in the blanks. But when you don't know where the story's going, like, I don't fucking know. Like, so Into the Wild, just no matter how hard I tried to move it out of the front, it just was like, no, and it's the first song, you know. So it kind of stuck, and it's just been there, and it's for me on a personal level really special that it's there because he loved that song, but I'm just glad it's on there.
Me too. You mentioned Butterflies and you said that was like your most emotional or
By
personal song, and you mentioned a few minutes ago in this interview about how, with this album and the lyric writing, you like went places you had been afraid to go to before. So let's talk about some of the other songs. Let's talk about Butterflies. Why is that one so special?
Yeah, Butterfly Effect was a weird one because I got to a point in the album where I was like, I had like many. So it's funny. Everything was like going, cruising, cruising. And then I got to this point where you're like, well, I know. I felt like I didn't have the last song. And even though I had Gone for Days, which is this anthemic big song, I'm like, the message in that song is about, it's don't be afraid to, we'll find our way and meet me in the woods. And it's almost like for me, and that felt like the last song for a while, but then it was like, but maybe this whole album, it almost felt like this whole album was like a dream sequence for somebody. Like they fell asleep and dreamt this whole story and they woke up and it's like, well, what did you learn from your experience? And so I got to this point where I just didn't have a last song. I had so many ideas, but they all felt wrong. It just didn't feel right. And, it's always funny when songwriters talk about how they wrote, so, I was at a Denny's at 3 in the morning and whenever I hear that, I'm like, you're full of shit. You spent days and hours on that thing. But to be that guy, um, I was in my bed and I sleep with my guitar essentially when I'm on the road. I have it very close to me and or in the bed because when I'm trying to fall asleep, I'll just kind of close my eyes and play. And I woke up at like 3 or so in the morning and it was like, it wasn't stress. It was more of this like, what is it? Like, what are you trying to write? Like, what is the thing? I'm writing all these songs and not like, why aren't they feeling right? Like, why? And so, I mean, no, I'm not going to make you listen to it, but
Oh, I wouldn't complain.
no, but and there I was with my hair, as my wife would say, I looked like Jim Carrey, she says to me when I wake, because my hair is just all crazy and goofy. And I'm in bed, and I literally said to myself, just say, it doesn't even have to rhyme, it doesn't have to make sense, what you're feeling right now. Put that into words. And I picked up the guitar, and the first thing that came to me was something that I tool around with a lot, which is this. And that started with Into the Wild, which is a. And I had that, and from that, when I was writing that, came this little. And so the first thing that came out of my mouth was, yeah, I miss California, a place that I should warn you. You'd probably fall in love with if you ever go. And I had that, and I was like, the hell was that? Now, but it was very clear that that was the beginning of the song. I was like, this is something. And I just started rifling through the things that were important to me. Like, you know, it that, you know, it was one of those things where, you know, I mean, literally, I'm thinking, sure, there's still bills to pay, and life can sometimes get away, but I know my love is waiting for me back at home. And I was like, well, you know, and I just kept going and going, and then I got to this part about my. I mean, I honestly should just. I kind of want to play it for you.
I mean, do you think I'm going to stop you? Go. It's amazing to hear you play it.
Not be, not for any other reason than if there's a song on the album that the way that this song came about was so crazy for me. I've never written a song like that. I mean, I've written songs quickly before, but this one, I mean, I literally woke up and I'm like saying to myself, I write this whole fucking song essentially in like 30 minutes, and then I lay down and I'm like, I don't know, maybe that's the best or worst thing I've ever written. I have no idea. And the next thing you know, I'm laying there and I can't sleep. I'm like, you need to record that on your phone. Like, you have to, because you will not. I know me. I'm like, if there's one thing I will not is, and it is remember that song in the morning. And yeah, I'll play it. Thanks for letting me play.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for having your guitar near you as always.
Yeah, I miss California, a place that I should warn you. Probably fall in love with if you ever go. Sure, there's still bills to pay. Life can sometimes get away, but I know my love is waiting for me back at home. She lives the actor's dream, a nightmare too at times it seems, and I still cannot believe I can read a movie star. She listens to her music while my mind runs adrift. I wonder who I'd be if I never played guitar. My sister has 2 kids, the other lives in Washington. My brother is my best friend, my other best friend passed away. And I try to call my parents, they're always running errands. They love to tell their stories, listen when I play. I don't like it when things change, it's not that I want my life plain. To be honest, I just hate that my dog is going gray. And I'm not sure what this is, perhaps a record that I live, or maybe it's just what happens when you turn 38. So if you're in California, don't say I didn't warn you. It's been nice getting to know you, the last thing that I'll say. Don't be afraid to take your time, fuck things up and step out of line. You only do this thing one time, So live your life that way. And it's okay to love and cry. Start new things and say goodbye. Don't take life for granted and be careful when you step on butterflies. And be careful when you step on butterflies. Yeah, that was so much of that song was so in the moment, you know, like even when I'm talking about I don't know what this is, that was me being really sarcastic as I was writing it. I was like, I'm not sure what the, you know, but maybe my birthday just passed. I turned 38 when I was there. So my birthday was on my mind, and I just started thinking about my wife, my family, my dog. My dog, like that line still kills me when I play it live because I was sitting there and this thought popped in my head. I'm like, man, I really hate that he's getting old and I'm not home. And
My cat is 14, so I get it.
you know, and you're like, fuck. And so I just kind of went into the studio and I was like, hey guys, I wrote something last night and I don't know what it is, but we're gonna try it. And they're like, great, get in there. So everyone's kind of in the studio listening, and I go in there and I play it, and everyone's just quiet. And they're like, what the fuck was that? And I'm like, I don't really know. And I'm like, I don't know if it goes on the record. No, 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 that's got to go on the record. That's got to go on the album. And it was just very obvious after I recorded it and listened back. I'm like, this is the last song, and it's on the album called Butterfly Effect Afterward. Because with that book idea in mind, you know, it's the afterward. It's, you know, you've got to know me through this record, and I just wanted to write something so fucking real. And what's crazy is, you know, I thought because of how personal it was that people wouldn't connect with it, but it's been the opposite. It's everyone knows what it's like to talk or not talk to their parents, or to have lost someone, or my family lives here and they live there. And especially that dog line, like I know it's crazy, but how many people experience that? And it's not a thing that's really sung about. It would have to, you know, it doesn't. And it's just the way people have connected with that song has been really special, and it's been really gratifying to know that the idea behind all of it, I guess, was to connect with people, and it seems to be doing that. And like, I think as a songwriter, that's your goal. I recently said out loud during something that, you know, I was asked like, what's your job as a songwriter? And I think for years my answer would have been to be successful and to have people love the music, and to, you know, but it's really this idea that I've grown to love, which is this being an emotional locksmith. It's like my job as a songwriter up there, for me at least, is to allow you, the listener, to open up doors in yourself and find a comfortable, safe place for you to experience these emotions. And I hope that I can be a vessel to do that through the music and through the connecting. And so I'm just honestly like really proud of the record. And it's weird, man. Like, in a weird way, I think that when you do this a long time, and I'm sure you've talked to so many artists that have been doing this forever, probably 20 years longer than me, or just their first year doing it, but there does come a point where you say to yourself like, all right, maybe me as a writer, or what, maybe everything's winding down. I don't know. Like
Mm.
you you ask yourself this shit. You just do. And I think that a lot of songwriters don't like to talk about that because it makes them feel like their career's over or whatever. And it's like, well, I decide when I'm done. And this album has rejuvenated this thing in me, and it feels like my first record almost. It feels, and I don't mean my first record. I mean, like, it feels like I'm at a point where I'm like, this, the way I feel about it and just what I'm doing, I've like fallen back in love with why I do this, which is like something I've been longing for, I think. So this album serves way more of a purpose for me than just something I'm proud of. It definitely was this kind of, you know, rekindling of the fire, if you will, you know.
That's so amazing. I'm so happy for you. I know you've made it clear that you didn't do this album for accolades or fame or commercial success, as wonderful as all those things are if they come around. But I do believe there is a little bit of Grammy buzz for this record, or I do believe you might have even said it at the Hotel Cafe, or maybe Katie said it, something that that's something you're kind of hoping for. In I assume like kind of the Americana like the categories that like Jason Isbell would be in, the Americana, the folk categories.
Yeah, that's come up, and that is a thing. Unexpectedly, you know, without being too whatever about it, um, how do I put it? You know, the people around me and people that have never been around me, um, kind of coming to the table and being like, hey, um, there's something about this album that, and we think it belongs in this place, for multiple reasons. And, when you grow up, you think about things like that. You think about, man, someday. But um, I think it's funny. Growing up, I think it was like, what's success? And it's like when you're young, it's to have a lot of money, right? It's like, I want to have money to do shit.
Or it's honestly like what American Idol is selling. Like, you got a record deal.
Right. It's like, that's
All your
the,
dreams are coming true.
right, right. I mean, I turned down out record deals on this album
Oh, wow.
straight out, like, and they just weren't right. And it's funny, those deals came after the album was done. So it was heard and then like, hey, and it was just like it wasn't right, and that's okay. I'm like actually very, very happy about that. But then it kind of moves to like, oh, Grammy and awards and shit. And but then there's this part of you that kind of is like, well, I just I think for me, success, an element of it is, and of course all those things play, but is like respect from your peers in the industry, respect from the people that you respect in the industry. And that's kind of what a Grammy represents. I mean, that community is really all about that, especially the Americana category and community, which I've always had those folk Americana pieces of me, and I think many times I kind of like fought it almost.
Mm.
Um, and then on this album, I was like, I just leaned into what I love and what I know I am. And so, shortly after the album came out, or the single came out, it was like, hey, we want you on Americana Fest, and hey, I was playing at the Nashville um, Grammy chapter, and getting to know those people. And all I can say is this: there's rules to what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not allowed to say surrounding this stuff. So all I'll say is, if people love it enough to recognize it in any way, it's an honor. And I can say that I think when people see what kind of unfolds over the next year, it'll be pretty exciting, and I think it'll be a really interesting thing for me at this stage in my career. And I'm really happy about it, and people will definitely be seeing more about this exact topic sooner than later, I'm sure. But right now, I'm just trying to not be the guy at the wedding who didn't try the chicken. You know what I mean? Like it's like I think lots of times I remember that when we got married. My wife and I remember people always said that to me. It's like, make sure to enjoy yourself and try the food. And I was like, yeah, yeah, shut up. And then afterwards, I was like, I actually didn't try the food. And I think I could say that for a lot of my career. I mean, even going back to Idol, it's like I think there were so many moments that are just a blur. I don't remember whether it's burying trauma or just not taking a breath to enjoy what was happening. Um, and I think that goes for a lot of my albums and writing and things like. But on this one, I'm really, like I said, I've fallen back in love with why I love doing this, and I love Ghost Stories and all my other records, but I think that I'm in a new stage of me. And I think there's something to say about not living in past versions of yourself. And, someone's been going to therapy. No, but it's true though. It's like kind of letting go of all the things that maybe hold you back and embracing the things that keep you going. And that album's been that for me on this one. And so yeah, back to your question about that stuff. I'm very excited for whatever could happen and what might happen. And the idea of it even is fucking crazy to me. But yeah, I think people will see some stuff and it'll be fun, and who the fuck knows, you know? So,
Well, whatever happens, I'm excited for you already that this album's out and that that's so great and that's getting the acclaim and that it's the album you wanted to make. And yeah, so just congratulations on everything.
thank you so much. You know, you have definitely been one of those people through the years who has always been, it's not just that you're a great interviewer or that you love music. It's like you've always been very honest in what you do. And it's akin to a songwriter in a way where it's like you can tell, you can smell bullshit from a mile away. You know what I mean? When someone puts out something, you're like, this isn't you. Or, but with you, it's never that. It's always, you're like genuinely, unapologetically you, and you love music. And I just have to say, I appreciate not only the relationship we've had over the years, but just, you know, what you've done for the music community is huge, you know, and you've done a lot. And it's really cool to be able to sit here and talk to you about that stuff, you know.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. That's really sweet. I'm going to cry. Oh,
It's true though. Like, I mean, there's, you know, it's the landscape is changing, right? It's like, we live in a time of TikTok and social media and 6 second clips, and you know, there's
mm,
sometimes maybe a struggle to find somewhere to put your feet. You know, it's like where you know, but having those places that you always kind of can, and I guess what I'm saying is what you're doing is important too. You know, it
mm.
really is to the industry and for musicians and songwriters to be able to tell their stories and talk about why it's important. Because I think nowadays it's very easy to look at artists as just these kind of almost like I mean, yes, a product, right? You are you're it is work and it is a business, but it's almost like there's more to it sometimes. And I think just to have people out there that allow for that is awesome. So thank you for that. I mean it.
Thank you, Lee. I mean, what can I say? That was very sweet and surprising because this interview's about you, not me, but
No,
thank
it's
you.
all
I'll
right.
take it.
Really.
Thank you so
You know,
much.
I'm at a point in my life and career, I think, where I'm just like, I don't know. I just kind of feel like saying what I'm feeling, you know, and it's like, it's the same with the music. I just, you know, songwriting is so important to me and storytelling is so important to me. The why to that, I may never know. I just know that, you know, from a young kid, you know, sitting there crying in my living room on the floor. I'm like 5 years old, and my parents run in the room and they're like, "Why are you crying?" And I was literally listening to John Denver's "Sunshine on Your Shoulders," and my
Oh,
mom's like, "What is wrong?" And I'm like, "It's the song." My mom's like, "What?" You know, they love telling the story, but
it's a great story, honestly. I
she's like,
would.
she's like, "What?" I'm like, "The song's just so beautiful," and my parents are like, "That's why you're crying?" And I'm like, yeah. And it was like from that moment forward, they were like, okay, music is a thing for him. And I've just always had a very, very deep emotional connection with music. I am the guy that I can cry listening to a song. I can get goosebumps listening to a song. I can get lost in that. And it's just very much so a part of me. So, you know, I think that the closer and closer I get to the best version of myself, the more comfortable I feel talking about it and like just being real about it, you know. And I think there's so much. The industry wants you at times to be, you know, guarded because it's like, what's really going on? And it's like there's something about being like, you know, like I'll just tell you, you know, like this is what's up, and like um, and if people don't get a sense of who I am through stuff like this, you know, they'll sure get a sense of it through the music because this album is through and through like a piece of me. So um,
Absolutely. And that story shows you were born to do it. You were born to do it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, of
So again, congratulations and thank you for the kind words as well. It's always lovely to speak with you, and I'm very
course.
happy for everything you got going on.
Yeah, and I'm sure we will talk again. So I look forward to it.
Me too. Absolutely.
All right.